wear my t-shirt this time. Can't we be friends? There we go. And
Hi,
so
Kelly, I'm sorry, this is the producer again. Can you take that line again? The recording wasn't on. They got you half mid-sentence.
all right. Okay, hi, I am Kelly McGinty, and I am part of Why Can't We Be Friends? And we are in partnership with Dell Medical Community Initiatives in order to kind of bring this programming to people. They're helping us with our expansion and trying to reach more people. Hi, Jaleesa, I'm so glad you were able to tune in. You got it figured out. We just started. I just did like a hi, my name is Kelly thing. So you're just in time. It says it's connecting your audio.
Okay, I got it.
Perfect. Yeah, we can hear you. So I remembered this time to wear my Why Can't We Be Friends t-shirt. All of our lovely panelists will be receiving this beautiful t-shirt as part of their participation. They are also available for purchase if you want to support the program. And tonight we are doing Why Can't We Be Friends? Ask a Black Woman. So the way that we have it set up is that people who have registered have already submitted questions, or they can submit questions during the presentation as we go. It is my job to kind of look at the questions on the other screen from our Slido app and go through and ask the questions one by one. And then each panelist is able to answer the questions if they want to pass it along to somebody else. If it's a question they don't want to answer, that's fine too. And it's just kind of like a conversation or a discussion. So people can also submit questions as we go. So with that said, I will check on our questions. And the first question that we have says, what is the biggest challenge in being an African American woman in today's world? That's a big one. That's a big question. But that's the first question that was submitted. So I have read that from the Slido app, and you guys can answer one at a time. And here we go. And if you need me to repeat questions, please let me know, okay?
Okay.
So who would like to go first?
And also kind of introduce yourselves a little bit.
Well, I'm Jaleesa. I stay on the north side of Austin. I've been living in Austin for maybe like 4 years now. I'm a chef at a senior living community. I'm 6 years old. Yeah, that's a little bit. I'm originally from Houston.
Great. And then Pat, do you want to introduce yourself?
Certainly. My name is Pat Neely, and I am a musician specializing in early instruments, music from the Baroque period going back to the Middle Ages. And I can just answer the question, what are the biggest challenges of being a Black woman? It's validation of what you do. It's finding a common ground so that you can feel as if you're talking to someone who is on the same intellectual level. And also, when we're in a position of power, either we're considered to be mean ladies or intolerable. There's never any sense in my experience, that you're valued for the gifts that you have to make a situation better.
CJ, do you want to introduce yourself? And
Sure. My name is Clarissa Jackson. I go by CJ, and I live here in Georgetown, Texas. I am actually retired. I retired after 35 years in HR, and retired as a global HR executive with General Electric. I, in terms of the question, I don't think the challenges, for me, the challenges being a Black woman in America are no different than they were 20 years ago, 50 years ago. Those challenges still exist. And probably the biggest one that I sort of faced throughout my career, and even now that I'm retired, it's people don't want to admit that they're uncomfortable around you. They don't know how to behave around you. They have a certain expectation that you're going to either go off on them, you know, sort of to your point, Patricia. There's this expectation of how they think you're going to come back at them, or you know, in the workplace, how you're supposed to behave. They're so unfamiliar with Black women, and they base so much on what they've seen on TV or their own judgments and biases that it impacts your ability to move freely in society, and that's a problem, and it always has been, in my opinion.
I would like to say I agree with both ladies, Patricia and CJ. It is very hard to be yourself, and also, you know, you want to maintain yourself and you want to be true to who you are, but at the same time, in workplaces, when meeting new people who aren't particularly used to being around Black women, it's always, you have to find that medium. And it seems like you kind of have to like, it's this little like constant tap dance of, you know, you don't want to be stereotypical, but there are things that, you know, you enjoy about being a Black woman, and, you know, and you, or that, you know, you can't help, it's just like in yourself. But, you know, you also don't want to be that stereotypical Black friend, the sassy Black, you know, character, or the, you know, you don't want to portray that, but at the same time, you want to be yourself. So I think it's just that constant struggle with, you know, not filling into the stereotypes, but also just trying to be yourself, and, you know, without judgment, you know, because when you walk out this door, it feels like as a Black woman, you're representing, especially in a not so diverse workplace or in a not so diverse group, you're the face of every Black woman in America sometimes. And that's a pretty hard burden sometimes on a woman, mentally, physically.
Yep. Very good point.
Okay, I am going to go back to the Slido. So the next question is, what is it like having to deal with both racism and sexism simultaneously? How does the combination make everyday interactions more difficult for you?
Um,
Well, I can speak on that. I'm not only a musician, I've also held other what I call day jobs and on managerial levels. In my last position, I was the manager of events and individual giving for Barnard Graduate Center, and I was hired by someone who is an alum from my college. So I thought that we had a connection that made our working experience one that was closer, and that he would understand where I was coming from because we've had the same experience at different times of the same educational experience. But in fact, I was used as a scapegoat for all his shortcomings. And I was kind of shocked by that because it was really bordering on both racism and sexism. And he finally, well, a lot of gaslighting experiences later, he finally found a way to have me laid off of the job. I knew why he did it. And what I did say is, well, if you're laying me off and not firing me, I want a recommendation on letterhead, which he did. And I never spoke to him again. But I did bring up to HR, this man filed a number of complaints about my work habits, which were all manufactured by him, but then he was able to give me a glowing review. I don't think that people see us as being that perceptive, and we don't show it. I mean, we don't want to be aggressive when we're in the workforce because that sends a message, but by being slightly passive, there's a tendency to think that we don't have the perception of how people are treating us. And it's always one of these things where eventually it comes to the fore and you're forced to do that to save yourself. And that's sexism and racism together, being a woman in a position of power and also Black.
And I think one of the things that that many people don't understand is how exhausting that is when you are dealing with those kinds of responses to you all day long in the workplace or at the supermarket or wherever you are. It is exhausting to deal with that your entire life. Why did he look at me that way? Why did she say it that way? You know, you're always second guessing constantly, because that's just how you become conditioned to that. And so it's difficult to trust people in the workplace. You know, to Patricia's point, she thought she had an advocate, and as it turned out, she didn't. She thought she had an ally. It's exhausting. And you spend your entire life learning to navigate that. And it's invisible to anybody who's not experiencing it. But it is very, very, it's tiring, it's exhausting. And you just have to deal with it because that's just the way it is. I'll share a quick story. When I was working, this was several years ago, the company I worked for acquired another company, and I'll say it was GE. It's public knowledge. It was all in the papers anyway. So GE acquired another business, and the individual who was leading the business that we acquired was a Black male. And he felt that he should be at a certain, he felt he should be brought in to GE at large at a certain level. And he wasn't. And so he sued the company. And because he sued the company, they were then forced to present documents on, you know, what other, who else was at that level, what their salaries were, so on and so forth. So there were only two other, there were two Black women who were at the executive level at that time. And so we were sort of included in this overall study. And what I found out, which we didn't even know, we each ended up getting $30,000 lump sum increases because as a result of his lawsuit, it revealed how much less we were being paid than our white peers who had less experience and were in the same jobs that we were. That was invisible to us. We didn't know that because we didn't know what other people at our level were making. But those are the kinds of things, these microaggressions that take place in the workplace, you know, by people who have sort of control over your livelihood and you're not even aware sometimes what's going on. And so you're always kind of, you know, doing this, you know, doing the whole, I used to call it the whole matrix thing, where you're kind of doing one of these things, you know, because things are just coming at you all the time. And sometimes you get it and sometimes you don't. But by the end of the day, you're tired. Believe me, you're exhausted.
And
Yeah.
sometimes I think that that's why high blood pressure is so prevalent among Black women and men. Um, this, living this kind of life is a real challenge, and at times you get used to it because that's just the way it is. But
That's
if
the
you
way
were,
it is.
yeah, but if you
Yep.
were to see how your white counterparts um, navigate through this, it is mind-boggling how easy it is for them and how it's something that we have to be on constantly. We can never turn it off.
Right.
I kind of feel exhausted just listening to it. It sounds exhausting. Jaleesa, I know that you wanted to chime in on this one.
I was just going to say that, growing up, I know a lot of, my friends growing up Black, we were told that you have to work 2 times harder, not only because you're a woman, also because you're Black. So you have to work 2 times as harder as as your next peer, because, they're already kind of set up for success, versus you have to constantly prove yourself. And you can have all the credentials that you want, but there's always going to be that person that's a shoe in because they grew up together, or they went to, they're in the same clubs, they know the same, they're in that same group, versus me, I'm the outsider. I already have all these, presumptions about me. So you got to work 2 times harder to get to where, your white peers are. So there's that. So that's what I thought of when you asked that.
Okay. So the next question is, how do you feel about having a Black woman now being our vice president?
I feel overjoyed. Half Black, half Indian. In my job, I spent a lot of time in India, a lot of time. And so just understanding, because I understand that side of her culture as well. When I look at, we as a country, we take 2 steps forward and 10 steps backward, but we do it like at the same time. And there's so much progress that we've made, but there's so much there's an element that's always there that will try to bring that down, and it will always be there. And so to be able to achieve that as a country makes me proud to be an American again, because there've been, years where I didn't feel very proud to be an American. And so I do feel that pride again, but I also know that she's had some tough experiences as well to get to where she is. It hasn't been all, jam up and jelly tight for her either. And so I empathize with that. And it's not to say that every single thing she's ever said and ever done, I totally agree with, and, I'm just right there with her or anything, but I am proud to see somebody who sort of looks like me as vice president of this country and could potentially be president. That makes me very proud. And I think that says a lot about our future. Makes me positive and optimistic about the future.
I was very shocked. I mean, I went out and I voted, but I seeing the state of our country, and I was not very, positive about it, but it really opened my eyes. Like, I was so glad that everybody went out and voted for her and Joe Biden. And I'm very proud, but I'm also, cautious, because she's got a lot of work ahead of her. And I believe it's going to take hundreds of Obamas, hundreds of Kamalas to, to get that significant change. We need more faces in Congress. We need more Black faces in Congress. We need more Black faces just on the local level of government. It's not just a stopping point there. We've got a long way to go, but that it was I'm not gonna down, her getting voted in. But it's just, we got a lot more to go. It's a very positive step, but we still have like a lot more.
And I want to add to that quickly, because you made the comment, it's going to take hundreds more of her and hundreds more in Congress. And the way I look at my age, I'm in my 60s, and at my age, I look at people like you, Jalissa, and my thing is, we need hundreds more of you. That's what we need. We need hundreds more of you. You are the future. You're the future of this country. Okay. And the fact that you get out there and you vote. When I was in college, and I registered to vote, I was in college at 17, so I actually registered to vote while I was in college. And they had the registration set up in the center building where we would go get our mail and everything in my dorm. They had this huge poster of Martin Luther King Jr. and it said, "He died for your right to vote." And I was like, how could you look at that and not register to vote? And so I registered to vote, and I have voted in every election since then. But I am now at a point in my life where my work career is over, so I'm at a different phase. I look to people like you to set the future of the country. So I'm depending on you. I'm depending on you more than I'm depending on Kamala Harris, to be honest.
I think Kamala Harris.
What'd you say, Jalissa? You
I said I would hope so. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know her personally, and you're not putting your faith in the wrong person. She is an amazing, amazing woman. And I'm so glad and happy that she agreed to come for this panel. So.
And I just want to say that, she is representative of the type of woman that we should all aspire to be. She does not suffer fools. She knows her politics, and she's not going to take any of this, well, I call it white privilege. She's not going to take that without an argument. Now, the other side of this is I was recently on a discussion on Facebook with some of my colleagues who call themselves Black radicals. They are not supporting Kamala Harris. They are the ones who are going to have the voice, and they are complaining that she's a wannabe Black because it's convenient for her right now. So when we say we put faith in our youth and the ones that are coming up as the next generation, we also have to really make sure that everyone is educated enough in what politics really is. We've had 4 years of a charlatan running this country who has influenced how we talk and how we think in ways that is really dangerous to the next generation, because everyone looks to a leader to emulate. And thank goodness we have someone like Kamala Harris there, not only just for us, but for everyone, to shine as an example of exemplary behavior as a politician.
Yeah.
I think that was a really amazing little dialogue about that. And I honestly was so excited to hear the answer to that question because I have to admit, I was shocked too. Being in Central Texas in such a, a very divided kind of red and blue. Well, there's not much blue, but there's a whole lot of red. It's easy. Hmm?
There's more blue.
I know Georgetown turned blue. So, but yeah, it's easy to kind of be like, which direction is this going to go? So, I think it's really exciting too. It's really exciting to see someone who's a stepmom. I love that mamala thing that they talk about. I mean, I'm not a stepmother, but it just made me happy for every stepchild in the country, to see something like that. So thank you guys for your answers to that one. And I'm going to move over here and pull up our next question. So this is a good little segue. Who were your female Black role models?
So my female Black role model, first of all, I grew up in the military. I grew up in the Air Force. Father retired Air Force, stepfather retired Air Force. I was born in China. I've lived in 9 different states. And so the way I grew up, just through osmosis, I was very aware of everything that was sort of going on during the time I was growing up. And my female role models were my mother, was a very strong role model. Shirley Chisholm, who was the first Black woman to run for president, which a lot of people don't even know that name these days. Shirley Chisholm kicked butt. We're talking like 1972. Barbara Jordan, who was a Democrat from Texas. Mm-hmm. I saw her lecture when I was in college. Powerful Black women who were huge names in the 70s. Cicely Tyson was always a role model for me. I always admired her, not only from her acting ability and the roles that she took on, but she had such a presence from a civil rights perspective. Ruby Dee, who was also an actress. So I know some of the names I'm throwing out. I don't know the demographics of who is on, but these are strong Black women who made their thumbprint, who their footprint at a time when it was extraordinarily difficult for Black women to do that, and paved the way in many ways for the Kamala Harrises, of today. But those were the sort of the people that I looked up to, and they were my mother was my mother. She was a stay-at-home mom for a while, then she worked for 35 years. Shirley Chisholm, Barbara Jordan were in politics. Cicely Tyson was an actor. So they were kind of all over the place. And Maya Angelou, my degree is in English literature, so I always admired her as well, and went to see her lecture, got her to autograph a book for me. So, those were the people that I sought out and tried to read and be aware of as much as possible. And they helped to formulate the person that I am today.
I think for me, I would also say it's my mother. And that is because she was a quiet protester. She grew up in the South, and she moved up north in the late 30s, early 40s. And she would tell me that whenever she came up to New York to visit, she would have a white friend buy her train ticket because there was well, it was substantiated that certain cars in the back were for only African Americans, and then the cars in the front were for white people. And if you were traveling from New York down south, you could start off in any car, but when you got to Washington, D.C. and had to change, you had to go into the segregated car. So she made it clear that she wasn't going to do that by having the whatever it was ticket that allowed her to sit in whatever seat she wanted. And she told me the story of having one of the porters come through in the dining car and tell her that, oh, no, you're not supposed to be here. And she had on her little white gloves and her hat with the veil. And she said, well, here's my ticket. My ticket says I can be here. And there was nothing they could do about it. And that's what I call quiet protests, where you know what your rights are and you stand up for it without any aggressive behavior. My other heroine is June Jackson Christmas, who was one of the first African Americans to graduate from my college. She graduated in 45, 46. They had a 3-year opportunity during the war to get your degree. And she is in her 90s now, and she is as sharp as anyone. She credits her family and credits the knowledge that they had to make sure she got a good education, even though we didn't know what that was going to mean after you get out of college in the 40s. And that at that time, you just went, you got your degree and got married. But she ended up becoming a very well-known psychiatrist. And again, as I said, she's in her 90s and is really quite someone to talk to about any issue.
I would say my role models growing up were a lot of like pop culture idols, you know, Beyonce. Just because she was from Houston, Texas, and you know, I grew up like from the 90s on to like now. I've just seen her grow, and you know, she's just always so poised, and you know, but you know, she's got that, you know, edgy side of her. Tyra Banks. I grew up, you know, I wanted to be a model, and I wanted to be, you know, she was just like a mogul, just like Beyonce. Like they made a name for themselves. Condoleezza Rice, when she was in office with George W. Bush, like I thought that was amazing. Oprah. I used to come home to school every day and watch Oprah. Now I know she may have a lot of backlash for, you know, the schools out in Africa, but I think that she's done more for her people than a lot of people can say. So Oprah is a big one. I still love Oprah. Who else? A lot of like 80s singers, Shaka Khan. I like Tina Turner. I think her story was amazing and what she overcome. Who else? Sister Souljah. I used to read her books a lot, and I probably shouldn't have when I was young, like a teenager, but I was reading her books. My aunt had a lot of her books in her bookshelf, and I love the way she wrote, and she always talked about. She was just very real. Yeah.
Well, I think Tina Turner and Shaka Khan would both be humbled that you referred to them as 80s singers.
Were they 80s singers? I could be wrong, but
no, Tina Turner is from the 60s.
Well, she probably heard it in the 80s.
Yeah. And Shaka Khan is big time from the 70s. So
okay.
Yeah.
Well,
but they've got endurance.
Yeah, they do. And their stuff is timeless, and they're powerful. They have powerful voices, and you know, they break barriers. Everybody loves them, some Shaka Khan and Tina Turner. Like, I mean, I think that's a household name.
I know that Shaka Khan was a member of the Black Panthers and worked to make sure. I mean, she managed sort of a food pantry to make sure that people in marginalized communities were fed. So she's got some history there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So let's see. our next question is, what are the biggest regular challenges you encounter in interracial friendships?
I think it's sometimes you walk into a friendship thinking that it's going to be a certain type of relationship, but it turns out to be something completely different. And you actually, when you meet someone, there's this face that they give you and what you think they are. And then you actually start getting to know them and you're like, oh, there's a whole nother side of you that I didn't know. And out here in Austin, I find that a lot, like, it's a different intention behind the friendship. Being a Black woman, I guess they just want, I don't know, they need validation, like, oh, well, I can't be racist because I have, this is my Black friend, and I'm not, or I can't be prejudiced. Like, I have tons of Black friends, but I think it's deeper than that. And it's just the constant, tap dance around, if you bring up race, it's they become uncomfortable. And if you bring out something that, hey, well, you said this, or you had referred to this, and well, why do that with me? And it's just like, oh, no, it's always that I'm not racist, like, I'm friends with you. But it's kind of, when you bring the light to something, they don't want to kind of communicate those issues. They rather just toss it to the side as, oh, you're just, you're always trying to make this a race thing, or things like that. I've found challenging, is trying to have those conversations with your friends when they get out of line with something, and it basically kind of ruins it, because no one wants to be called a racist.
I think also, when I think about relationships that I've had with colleagues and friends who are white, there is this, I'm trying to think of the word, it's patronizing at times. Something will happen and I will say, that's not right. I think, there's something odd about that person's response to me. And then I'll say simply that the person is discriminating against me. And a friend will say, oh, no, she couldn't be like that. Oh, no. It's this privilege of being your friend, thinking that you are going to assimilate to be like them rather than being yourself and saying, my perception of this is this, and you have to respect my perception, rather than say to me in a patronizing way, oh, no, you couldn't possibly be. So, those are the kind of problems that come up when you do have friends from other persuasions, because they're feeling that comfortable with you that they can let their guard down too. So it's an educational experience for both sides.
Yeah, there's a couple of things my father used to say that I've always thought about in sort of picking my friends and who I want to associate with. And he used to say, always remember that everybody who's Black isn't your friend, and everybody who's white ain't your enemy. So, look at people for who they are, who they show themselves to be, and base your association with them on that. So that was one thing. And the other thing he used to say is, anybody who says some of my best friends are Black is a racist. Just make sure you're not that best friend they're talking about. And I have actually ended friendships based on that, because not a lot, but I know that there came a time for me in the course of a friendship where I realized that my so-called friend I made them cool. I made them cool by, if they took a picture with me and put it on Facebook or whatever, then, that made them cool. And I had to catch on to that because and it's not that I didn't think they didn't care about me or anything like that, but it just wasn't sincere.
It was revolutionary for them.
Exactly. And I did not want to be that best friend. And so I had to cut things off. And so those sort of insights from my father, I've always thought about as I look to identify people of other races that I wanted to be friends with. But again, it goes back to let people show you who they are and act accordingly in terms of whether or not you want to be a friend of that person or not.
It sounds like in some of these instances, you're being used.
Absolutely.
And that's just more exhaustion.
Absolutely.
It just sounds.
And it's sad.
It is sad. And it reminds me a little bit of like when I hear, I have family members and friends who say things like, well, I'm not racist. I have a grandchild or a niece that's interracial, right? And I think, but what does that have to do with you or your behavior?
Right.
Like proximity does not eliminate racism.
No. And what it does is what they have done is they have reduced their grandchild to a prop.
A pawn.
Their grandchild has become a prop for them. To tee up, to hold up whenever they want to be cool, or show that, hey, look at me, this is my grandchild, so I'm cool.
It's arm candy is what we call it.
Yeah.
And then the other, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say that I was at work one day and I was actually very horrified by this lady's comment that I worked with, a coworker, because she had, she had a biracial son, and her, the father of her child was of lighter skin, and she was white, and she said, well, my son doesn't even look black. And I said, wait a minute, yes, he does. Like, I mean, and there's nothing wrong with that. She's like, well, no, there isn't anything wrong with that. But I'm just saying, when I look at him, I don't see a black kid. I'm just like, well, you know what? Society will. When he goes to school, whenever, he applies for jobs, anything, when he gets pulled over, that's going to be a black man, and you should recognize that always. It was just scary for me to hear that, because it was just like, recognize that you have a black son and that's okay. He has black features and that's beautiful.
I was going to mention the assimilation factor also. I remember someone I worked with who I was quite friendly with said to me at one point, I sometimes almost forget you're black, meaning I didn't sound black to her. And maybe the conversations we had were not what she expected to have with another black person. And she thought that was a compliment.
Right. She thought that was a compliment. Basically called what we've been called Oreo cookie. Okay. You're white on the inside, you're black on the outside.
Yeah.
Which is bull. But you are who you are. But yeah, it's that whole, you've just insulted me. And you think you've complimented me.
Yeah.
So does this feed into some of that, like, I don't see color stuff that people say?
That's bullshit. I'm sorry. It is.
It is.
It just is.
Somehow they feel, when people say that, they feel as though it just kind of cancels out, everything that you are from inside and out. I'm proud to be black. Don't try to put me in this other category where I'm, white, because that's not my history. That's not my ancestors. That's not anything that I'm about. So it isn't a compliment. So, yeah.
Okay, I'm going to go back into Slido. Let's see. What do you think about the mass incarceration of Black men?
Well,
You know,
I know
I
somebody.
I have a daughter, so you know, I haven't raised a son. And when I talk to other parents who have sons, I find it almost incredulous that they have this sense of worry about where their kids are going. Um, I totally understand it because I've seen it. We've all seen it in the news. But the fear that they have to live with, that at some point in their son's life, he may be pulled over, he may be arrested, he may be beaten up, he may even be killed, is absolutely mind boggling to me that we live in a society like this. I wasn't around when people were being lynched in the 50s. You know, I was too young to know that. I know it's there, but my parents never talked about what would happen to me if I stepped out of the neighborhood. And you know, it's something that has been a rite of passage for every young man, to have their parents tell them what to expect and how to behave.
I definitely believe that there should be a reform, that it is not being paid attention to, because once you're arrested and once you're proven guilty, you're a criminal. And it's very hard to come back from that. Even if you serve your time and you pay your dues and you do everything to the T, you're still not allowed to vote. It's very hard to get home when you're convicted of a felony. So it's not just the incarceration, in the prison, it's also what you have to deal with after coming out of prison and the lifestyle that you're kind of forced into. And it's just like a vicious cycle. I don't think there's a lot being done about it. But it's definitely an issue that should be kind of put on the front burner out in the US, because it's quite ridiculous, especially with, some of these charges that people are in prison for. And I don't know, it's a pretty touchy subject, because there are people that do bad things and are not bad things, but commit crimes and deserve to be in prison. But there's a lot of shady things that go on in the criminal justice system that revolve around money. And if certain people, if you have their, money talks in the criminal justice system. So if you're impoverished and you're trying to make a way out for yourself, it's just a vicious cycle. I've seen it with family members, and it's quite sad, and there does need to be more done about it. So yeah.
so one of the things that I try to do, the mass incarceration of Black men and boys is just it's another element of the institutionalized racism that we have in this country. And Brian Stevenson, who's a civil rights attorney who wrote Just Mercy and started the Equal Justice Initiative, has spent years working to address the issue of children being incarcerated. And so I have gone to the Equal Justice Initiative in Montgomery. I donate to the Equal Justice. So I try to do what I can do as an individual to help reform as much as possible. But again, all of that is a part of, the institutionalized, ingrained racism that exists in this country. And it's going to take, it's going to take a lot of people and a lot of time and a lot of patience for us to move through that.
So I'm going to go on to the next question. These two are kind of related. It's what do you believe is needed now to dismantle white racial biases and privileges? And then there's also one in here that people are asking if there are any books or resources that you would, recommend, talk about, whatever that looks like, to help expand education beyond like the basics of this. So it's kind of two questions in one. People are wanting to know what you personally believe could be done right now to try to help dismantle some of the white race, the privilege, and also any sort of resources. They specifically said books, but I think really any resources at all, even music. I think music is a resource,
Mhm.
artists. So with that, I will open up the question to you guys.
Well, I'll start off on that one. White privilege, first of all, white privilege is not, it's not a thing that you can dismantle. It's a mindset. And so it's how people are conditioned, or how they've conditioned themselves to believe something. So it's not, there's no one thing that you can say, here, if we just do this, it'll all go away and it'll be, sunshine and rainbows for everybody. It's not going to work that way. Personally, I think it will always be there on some level, as long as there are people of different colors walking this earth. And maybe one day we will all be brown. That's what the experts say. Everybody's going to be brown one day. But we're not there yet. And so as long as we've got people of different races and ethnicities walking this earth, there will always be an element that will feel entitled to have more than somebody else just based on the color of their skin. And, if you want to talk about dismantling, I think it starts with education. I'll tell you another quick story. So I'm actually writing a book about my father too, and because his life has just been incredible. But we lived in Great Falls, Montana, on Malmstrom Air Force Base in the late 60s. And there's 4 kids in my family. Every single day when we moved into our house, when we were finally able to get a house on base, finally, after my dad literally called the White House, there was this little barefooted white boy that would run by the house every day and call us niggers. And he would say, niggers, niggers, niggers. And he was probably about, I'll say, 8 or 9, okay? Every day, like clockwork. So we finally told my dad, and my dad hid in the bushes one day. And when this little boy came running by, my dad chased after him, told the little boy to take him to his house, which he did. And this is on an Air Force base. My dad knocks on the door. When the little boy's father answered the door, my dad told him, your son comes by my house every day and calls my kids niggers. And he said, now the next time it happens, I'm not going to do anything to your son. The next time it happens, I'm coming over here and I'm whipping your ass because he learned this from you. Okay? So when you talk about dismantling white privilege, it's taught, it's learned. That's how, and it's learned at a very, very early age in most instances. And so again, it's not something where you can just click it on and click it off with this magic thing. In terms of books, there's a really good book. It's an old book called Black Like Me that I would recommend people read, about a white guy who went through some skin treatments and turned himself Black, and then toured the South in the 60s and actually experienced what it was that Black people were experiencing. Just Mercy by Brian Stevenson is an excellent book. Any of Maya Angelou's books, I Know Why the Cage Bird Sings. I mean, there's so many books that are out there. Google it, Google this stuff. This is not hard. There's so many resources that are out there. Just Google it and pick up 3 or 4 of them and start reading, or do Audible, do whatever. The Invention of Wings is an excellent book. I mean, there's so many books that are out there. So yeah, I mean, I could go on and on about all the literature that's out there for people. The movies, the autobiography of Miss Jane Pittman, okay, Cicely Tyson. She did that in the 70s. Outstanding film. Tons of stuff. There's tons of resources out there.
Yeah, I wanted to mention two books well, one book that's been very popular in the past year, called White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo. And it deals with how white people respond to allegations of racism, or, how they dismiss the talk because it makes them feel uncomfortable. So that's one book. And the other is on a series of articles by Peggy McIntosh on white privilege. And she began that research back in the 60s, late 50s, early 60s, and actually taught a course on male privilege and white privilege at a K through 12 private school in New York. And now she runs the Women's Center at Wellesley. She talks about her experience as a white woman and how she has analyzed how she approached other ethnicities, and lays it out really clear as to what you don't think you're saying, you're saying.
Right.
And then the other part of the question was, I'm sorry, I lost track of you said
What can people do now? Like, what are some things?
dismantle.
Mhm.
Well, we have to talk about it. I mean, diversity initiatives, are not ephemeral. If you get involved in trying to change something, you're going to be in it for the long haul. It's something that will never find an end. It's something that has to be managed constantly.
I believe I agree with everything those ladies said. Um, it's really it's going to be a constant day-to-day struggle with checking white privilege. It could be, well, I if you find yourself saying, well, no one owes you anything. So if you already have that like sense of entitlement with going to the store and you think somebody owes you you know, a smile or any of things on that level, you got to check yourself. Well, why do I expect someone to smile at me? Or why do I, just constantly check yourself before you accuse someone else of their character flaws. Like look within yourself. I think that's the first step in checking white privilege.
And it sounds like it's a lifelong thing. Like, that's what I'm hearing. It's not like, what can we do now? Okay, well, let me give you this checklist of things. You'll be done with it by Friday, and then you're good to go.
Right. There's
Right.
no recipe. There's no recipe.
Right. And it is a lifelong thing, and that's okay. It's okay that it's something that we do from here on out, right? My understanding of the white, I didn't read it, but my understanding of it was that like people like me need to say, oh, I am racist, right? What level of racist am I? Am I like majorly racist, or am I, what level of enculturated racism do I have inside of me? And what can I do personally to bring that down, right? That was kind of my understanding of it, is that we all have to just be like, instead of saying, I have a Black niece or a Black nephew, or my best friend is Black, there's no way I'm racist, is kind of like waking up a little bit and going, I'm racist because I'm a white American woman, and I've been enculturated to think certain things throughout my life. And whether it was on purpose or not on purpose, or whatever the case may be, it doesn't change it, right? But what can I do apparently now or before, and then forever, moving forward.
And I spent, 35 years in HR. One of the things that I've learned is the majority of people are very self-unaware. So for anybody for many people to say what you just said would be like revolutionary, because many people are just not self-aware enough and won't take the time to be introspective and really soul search about who they are, because coming face to face sometimes with who you really are can be ugly and scary, and you may not like what you ultimately are confronted with. And so it's easier to just avoid that. So that's going to be, that's a tough push for a lot of folks to make. And, the other thing is I've met so many white people who feel that in order for everybody to be treated with dignity and respect and have the same God-given rights that they enjoy, that for some reason they have to give something up in order for that to happen. Like, you don't have to give anything up. Why do you feel like you have to give? I had a person in my family, a white person in my family say that, I know that I have white privilege and I'm not ready to give that up yet. Why do you feel like you have to give something up in order for other people to be treated with dignity and respect? And that's the mindset a lot of people have as well. I am not giving it up. I have it. I enjoy it just because of the color of my skin, and I'm not letting it go.
It's this, sense of complacency that's being disrupted. I mean, we talked about how we feel as Black women on a day-to-day basis. It's in our face all the time. And now we're actually challenging and charging our white friends to do the same. Um, you know, it's not comfortable, but if there is a dialogue between two people, if you say, "What did I say to bring this on?" or how do you see me as your friend? What can I do to make you feel comfortable? I mean, it's a sort of a dialogue that has to be constant so that you can feel as if if you've done something wrong or been told you've done something wrong, you can ask that question. How do I, if I did that, how is it interpreted and how can I change that behavior?
Well, we have basically reached our amount of time that we typically spend on this. I really want to take an opportunity again to thank all of you for being here this evening, taking time out of your lives, out of your day, out of your jobs, out of your book writing, out of your musical interludes, which I still think we should plug that for the live stream tomorrow. Hmm?
I'll put it in the chat.
Okay, great. That would be wonderful. She's going to be live streaming from New York, the concert that she's been working on. And I think that that's so amazing. I would love to see it. And it's so important to have these conversations. When Chuck and Larry got together and formed Why Can't We Be Friends, this is really exactly what we wanted. We wanted a place where people could have conversations, open communication, and have a kind of diverse group of people come together. And I really honestly think that this panel was perfect, having the three of you here with your different perspectives, different ages, different experiences, military, family, chef at a restaurant. I mean, everything that you guys have going on, a musician, you guys have completely different yet similar, experiences. And I value that you've come here this evening, and thank you for that. Is there anything that anybody would like to say or add yeah, and we don't have to.
I have one comment that I would like to make. It's a suggestion, actually.
For sure.
Anytime anybody, black or white, whatever, if you are ever in a situation where somebody says something that is either racist or in any way off color, check them on it. Speak up. Let them know that you don't appreciate the comment that they just made. I'm not saying you have to get all up in their face. I'm not saying you have to put your dukes up, you know, and start a fight or anything like that. But what you can do is let that individual know that you do not appreciate the comment that they just made. And then you can walk away. But they will know, and they will bookmark that. And hopefully they will not say that again, thinking that if you're white and they're white, that they're safe to say that around you. Because if you don't say anything, then you're complicit in perpetuating those kinds of comments and that kind of behavior. So that's the one thing. And I know, you know, my husband has said that comments have been made on the golf course. People have made comments at the movie theater. People, you hear these things all the time, but if it's ever made around you, make sure that you check that person right then and there and let them know you don't appreciate it, and then walk away.
Anybody else?
Hi, Kelly. Guys, this is Chuck. I'm just reminding you to do one last commercial
Yes.
before we go off the air.
For Dell or for the t-shirt?
For Dell and for the t-shirts.
Okay. I'm going to let you guys finish up with your final thoughts, and then I will do one last commercial. No. So CJ was saying, you know, we need to let people know it's not okay. Sometimes what I feel like when people say things like that to me, that they're feeling me out. Like, is she somebody that I can say things like this around?
Of course
Is she
they are.
us, you
Of
know?
course they are.
And so when we say, hey, that's not all right, you know, and that's what I say to people, because I'm super non-confrontational. So if I say to somebody, that's not okay, to me, like, that is how I kind of send the message back to them. Like, I'm not the person for this, you know?
Mhm.
And I use it with other stuff too. Like, I don't like people idly gossiping to me. That's not okay. You know, like, and it's not something that somebody can like come at me and be super aggressive back. Cause all I'm saying is it's not okay. Right. And then Patricia, do you want to leave us with some?
Oh, I think CJ said it quite well. We need to be empowered as a group, and there is no reason for us to remain silent right now. We have the open door through all of the problems that we've encountered with justice in the past year. And also now that the door is open with a new regime where we have a person of color who can guide us if we need that guidance and can empower us to speak up. And I think things are going to change in the next year or so if we all do that.
I'm just so excited that I got to be in this discussion with you ladies, and this is the type of discussions that we need to have, and it makes me kind of want to go out there and do it again. So very eye-opening, and I learned a lot. So thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. I'm super excited about all of it. So as I've been instructed, I will let you guys know that we are in partnership with Dell Medical Community Initiatives. And they have been super helpful. And mostly all they really what they want to do is they found us, they liked what we have going on, and they wanted to help us expand. We were really focused on kind of the Georgetown area in the beginning, and now it's more expanded out into Central Texas in general. And who knows where it could expand from there, right? But we do feel like these are important conversations, and we do feel like, you know, having an open dialogue where people can feel free to kind of express themselves is a little, you know, a little bit that we can offer to, you know, our community. And we're super lucky that we are able to get participants like you guys. And then also another plug for the t-shirt. This is the Why Can't We Be Friends t-shirt and logo.
I'm excited to get mine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so am I.
And
It's so the bottom says unity is strength and diversity is power. And
right on.
Yes.
Great.
And so those are for sale if you would like to support the program. And I want to thank all of you ladies. I will be in touch with you guys through email to get the rest of the information about where to send t-shirts and whatnot. And I can't thank you enough. This has been amazing.
Thank you. Thank you for the invite. I'd like to thank Marion Cobran and Linda Schaefer, who approached me and invited me. I'm really thrilled to be able
Me
to
too.
participate.
And I want to thank Kenneth Witherspoon for giving me a platform. Thank you, Kenneth.
Thank you, Kelly.
Oh, I am thrilled that I was going to stalk you a little bit. I kind of did stalk you a little bit. I'm so thrilled that you accepted.
I'm glad I did accept it. I was a little bit worried at first, but you know, it's good. I'm glad that this is a big step for me. So
I'm really glad. And you look wonderful. I've missed you.
Great.
I'm glad everybody's thought out and is safe and healthy.
I know that was a nightmare. It really was. Central Texas, no ice storms. So, all right, everyone. I think Jaleesa froze a little bit, so I don't know, but we're gonna go ahead and, on that note, end the discussion.
Okay.
And it's been so great. I swear I could probably stay for another hour and hang out, but again, I thank you, and I will be in touch with you guys. And thank you to all the people who joined tonight and to watch this. We appreciate you guys too. And
Is there any way that we will see the comments? I mean, like,
I can see the chat comments.
but we have to see them live. We can't see them. They're not like transcribed anyplace.
I don't know. You know, that's something I can ask our admin about. Oh, Chuck, is that you?
I just say the chat. So there will also be a recording available, and usually the recording has chat on it as well.
Great.
Perfect.
Excellent.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you,
Thanks, guys.
everybody. Have a
Bye.
good night.
You too.
You.